Let's let's try another version of a mini treatment plan, this time with active passivity. So again, just looking across the different links and targets over time. Often what triggers this pattern, I'm thinking of a particular client, is that others oversimplify a task in some way. So they might make a request, or they might have an expectation, or they might give feedback, all of which can be triggers. But the gist of it, the essence of it, is it feels like it's oversimplifying how difficult something is. And then that leads to this kind of complicated reaction where there's a surge of fear, a surge of shame, and really distress goes up and independent problem solving goes down. The sensation is really of being helpless and overwhelmed. And so, explaining this to the client, I would say, so you become active at communicating your distress. Your body just is thrashing around, whereas all of your usual competence drifts away. It's just not available to you. And that pattern we call active passivity, and it is associated with many bad things in your life. So concretely, when people see you in that kind of a state, they move in to control you. It undermines your sense of competence and their respect for you. And it actually continues your sort of dependence in this way that you don't like. You don't ever actually learn how to do it because you get overwhelmed, and then in a very normal way, you pull back from persisting. But what ends up happening is that people start to burn out on you. And I would give examples of how that is. And you become more and more self-critical. And that sense of being a burden, of not respecting yourself, etc., is part of what makes the urges go up when you want to be done. So that's active passivity, sort of how I might describe it. And then what's the replacement behavior? Remember, the idea here is with a mini treatment plan, the first thing is always to go for behavioral rehearsal. So here's what I would say for this person. The replacement behavior is primarily active problem solving, and part of that problem that has to be solved is communicating well to others. So the first is to observe and describe, especially emotion, this first pattern of where there's the surge of fear and shame and overwhelm, to really get the hang of what that is and to detect it early. And then work on doing a dear man with an especial strong E, where there is a real description of what is overwhelming and why it's hard, and asking for help in a way that's more direct. There's learning to self-validate the difficulty. There's doing a lot of coping ahead and other types of active problem solving, staying in conversations rather than withdrawing, etc. And then in terms of distress tolerance, really working on one thing in the moment. And the last here is accurate, effective emotion expression, so that you respect how you're expressing yourself and others respect. So sometimes with active passivity, there's a kind of dramatic quality because you feel so desperate. And so the body and brain have just learned to really express things at a strong level, because you're drowning, really. It's like anybody who's thrashing around when they drown. So that's behavioral rehearsal. But again, as we did with self-invalidation, sometimes the pattern is actually much more pervasive. So when that is the case, in this case I'm saying sometimes further active passivity is a pervasive emotion regulation strategy that's both negatively and positively reinforced. As the emotion goes up, fear, shame, overwhelm, the experience and expression become more intense. And then when you do actually express it, often you feel relief. So the removal of distress by others helping, for example, can produce relief, and it can also just be positively reinforcing that others actually do take it seriously, that you don't know how to solve it, and they step in and help. So as emotion goes up, active independent problem solving goes down. It is both negatively and positively reinforcing for this pattern. And similarly, sometimes with some folk, because of the way that this pervasive emotion dysregulation happens, you actually have lived through, watched yourself really fall apart. And so there can become a much more, what I would think of as respondently conditioned pattern that's really a primary maladaptive emotion, where when certain cues come, you fall into this despair about your ineffectiveness and your incompetence. And it's really this very profound primary, it fires really quick, very intense maladaptive emotion where it's just like, I can't, I am not capable at a really profound level. So that is active passivity.